I'm sorry, Councillor Perry. Yes, you press your, got to get you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, to my knowledge, there's no need to pull all of C1, but how about we just pull item C1 sub R3, because that's the same one I wanted to pull as well.
C1
From a perspective of handling the minutes and what that would look like, we were going to just pull the whole item out so that it would be captured in a way that the public would be able to follow in the minutes. And then we could still just do a motion to approve all the other items.
We did, the clerk and the deputy clerk and I did have that discussion this afternoon as how to best approach it. So we thought we would do it for this meeting, and Samantha's going to go away and come up with a better way to handle this. And I appreciate your suggestion, Councillor Perry. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I will, in that case, if the whole C is coming forward, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. I'd actually like to move item, I guess how we're referring to it as C1, the Facilities Project Status Report, out of the consent agenda because I wish to change the recommendation.
Councillor Gardner, you had your...
Thank you, Mr. I'm not sure of the protocol in this, but we have a couple of members in the audience who are here for a particular item. Would be the time to pull it forward now, or it's with respect to a notice, with respect to a motion that was given notice last week? Marcus wants to speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's just there's a couple of members in the audience that are here for my motion on the winter maintenance service levels. So I'm just wondering if we can maybe deal with that first. I can make a motion to move it forward. Waive procedure.
We have to multitask here. The motion is to waive procedure and bring Councillor Marakis' motion forward. It's been moved and seconded to waive procedure. Yeah, we've finished. Yeah, we're working through this one. As long as the clerk can keep us in line. Any comments or questions on the waiver of procedural bylaw to discuss the motion? Councillor Perry. Hola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we just deal with the consent items first, figure out what we all want to pull? I'm all in favor of moving on that next, but let's finish one thing before we start another.
Okay, so at this point, we have the items that we wish to discuss is the Aurora's Multicultural Festival. That's R3 from last week. The JOC final project, that's item C1, and I believe that's it. Councillor Gardner.
R5 as well.
Anything else? We've got 3 items. So how are we going to handle this then?
So you have a motion on the floor to waive procedure and move
Well,
forward.
what about the other items? Should we approve the other items?
Do you want to do them in the consent portion?
You should.
Yeah, so then could I have a motion please to approve the items not requiring separate discussion? We'll just change that as SNART. Councillors Thompson and Gardner. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So we have 3 items then on pulled, and then so there's been also a motion to move waive procedural bylaw to move Councillor Marakis' motion forward. Any comments or questions on waiver of procedural bylaw? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Then I'll turn it over to you, Councillor Marakis. I presume you're going to move it? I'd like to second that, please. Councillor Humphreys, thank you. Councillor Marakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We dealt with this a year and a half ago, and we're revisiting it due to the fact that I guess we can say we had an episode where we had about 7 centimeters of snowfall, and the roads just weren't cleared on the secondary streets, and residents were driving around, slipping and sliding everywhere. And it was, at the end of the day, it's not a safe atmosphere, and it's not a service level that I think that our residents deserve, and that we should be providing to our residents. We should be providing a much higher standard. And that's why a year and a half ago I asked for us to revert back to our previous service levels, and that's why I've put this forward again, because I feel that we do need to move back to that service level. And as I've stated many times, I believe it's our job to provide the best possible service at the best possible price. And right now, as it stands, I do not believe that the service level for our winter maintenance is at the best possible service level for our residents. And so that's why I've put this forward now at this time. And for right now, I see a bunch of my colleagues would like to say a few things, so I'll wait to hear what they have to say before I continue and go a little bit further.
Bruce. It doesn't need to go back.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. And appreciate the motion being brought forward. I agree with Councillor Marakis that snowfall was not what our residents expected, not what I would have expected. But not only that is my concern, is the parking associated with it, where there's parking all the time unless an event is called. And when an event is called, anyone parking on streets, whether you're at, parked on Yonge Street at a business, or you are a contractor working at a home, you will be tagged if you don't move your vehicles during that snow call. And that one that we did have, I think was either before or after, at 4:30 in the afternoon, a business owner called me and said, so I'm getting tagged while I'm installing insulation at this client's home. How do I continue doing my business? And I live in Aurora, by the way, a very reputable company. So I think when the alternative to the service levels was brought forward to us last term, obviously some mild winters, some great ideas. I feel that, we thought we'd take a chance. We were assured that the service levels would not be impacted. In fact, bettered was sold to us as that, and I had faith in that it would work. The realization of the parking being, the restraints being what they are in terms of allowing all-night parking. I don't mind it, when it doesn't snow, but when it snows, we have to have clear roads. It's causing a lot of problems for a lot of residents, and I'd like to see the reinstatement back to the original winter maintenance service level, including parking. To be off roads from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. like we used to have. And again, why I like that, in retrospect, I had no idea that we had the snow event and parking restrictions at that call. I misinterpreted, my own fault, not reading the report in absolute detail, that I thought not having cars parked on the road, and when a snow event was called, that you would not park again 1 a.m. to 5 or 6, and that's not the case at all. It was then and there. So I can't imagine how we can, expect our residents to stop shopping and get their cars and go home if they're just going a block away to pick up groceries or whatever and get tagged because there's no event. So for me, it's a couple of lessons learned, and I'd like to see this reinstated.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And further to that, and it's something we've gone around and around, is the problem when residents shovel their driveways and then the sidewalk plow comes by, or perhaps more seriously, the snow plow. And so it's the windrow situation. And, I think it needs to be rediscussed. I would say garbage, winter maintenance, and perhaps streetlights are the most critical issues to residents' enjoyment of the town. So I would like that to be included.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I've got sort of some mixed feelings. The reason we adopted these new service levels was to address cost increases, and I think that's something, without knowing what the implication of reverting back to the 2013, 2014 service levels would be without knowing the cost, I think is a problem. So that's one issue. I'm also not opposed to looking at the information again. But to me, what I'm seeing isn't necessarily a service level issue. In some cases, it's a common sense issue. I've heard from some residents that the snowplow went by twice on their road that during the last snow event. Both times they just salted. They didn't drop the plow. So for me, from a common sense perspective, if the roads have snow on them, if it's noticeable that people would have a hard time driving on those roads, why wouldn't you just drop the plow, clean it up, and help to alleviate some of the concerns that the residents would have. I think that there's a sense of ownership required for somebody maintaining our streets. And so for me, it's not necessarily a matter of returning to the old service levels. I think it's common sense that if your route takes you through a street twice, it would be very easy just to drop the plow, not just salt, but drop the plow, clean up the roads. So to me, that I think is one of the major concerns and the major issues. Again, I'm happy to look at this, but if we're going to look at it, I can't just snap my fingers and say we'll revert back without knowing what it's going to cost the residents. So those are my comments.
Thank you. My comments would be very similar. It's just, I think it always good to look at your service levels in pretty much everything that the town does to make sure that you are providing the best service for the best price. But I do think that we do need to see the cost before we decide to move forward on switching back midstream to the 2014, 2013 service levels. And I also want a bit of clarity. To me, this motion reads as a motion with respect to plowing and street clearing as opposed to parking. But Councillor Humphreys referred to parking, so I'm wondering if that's not included or is included, and just a bit of clarity on that. And my comments are similar to Councillor Peary in that I'm happy to look at it, whether we look at it for action this year or for next year, but I think we just need some more information surrounding the decision before we can go ahead and make it. I mean, without knowing the cost is probably the biggest one, but there's other implications as well. So perhaps either Councilor Maracas, who moved the motion, or a staff member would be able to provide some of the clarity on those questions. Not sure.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. Certainly, I agree with the sentiment that, there's some core issues or services that we have to provide, and we have to get it right every single time. And, snow plowing and garbage and water are those types of services, because when we don't do it right, we certainly hear about it, the town hears about it, and so that should always be the focus. You got to do those basics right before we start expanding service levels and doing different things. We had this discussion 4 years ago, and so I do share some of the similar concerns that Councillor Peary and Councillor Tom raised with regards to, I'd like to get the full indication if we were to put this into effect immediately, what, if any, staffing or cost implications, what impact does it have overall? And it would be nice to get some of that feedback from it. I'd also like to get a sense whether or not the issues that we've been experiencing recently are strictly policy related, or is it really more about how we've been implementing the policy? And that kind of feedback, I think, is crucial. I certainly agree that we need to provide the best service level, absolutely. But I would feel more comfortable moving forward with changing it by having some of that information provided by staff, both around how the policies are being implemented and whether that's part of the reasons we're having these issues, and exactly what is the cost and impact of it. I don't know if perhaps we can find an interim solution over the next couple of weeks to help us move forward while staff bring that information back, but certainly I'd feel more comfortable having some of those facts.
Thank you. The one thing that we haven't got quite sorted out yet is the first and second time around, so I'm sort through some of the details. To the concerns already expressed by a couple of the councillors, I too, well, first of all, I mean, we all want the roads plowed in an efficient, effective, and as quickly as possible. But I'm not sure that it was a service level issue so much as an execution issue. And I would like to go to Mr. Nader Rosny, our CAO, because there was certainly a lot of internal discussion as to how that happened. And I mean, if you look at the winter service levels this weekend, the sidewalk plows were out Saturday and Sunday, which, I mean, I had people ask me about that, because that was the other side. The pendulum had gone to the other side. So if I could go to you, sir.
I'm on? Oh, it says Patricia. Through Mr. Mayor, thank you. So the event that caused this issue to come up was in December, just prior to Christmas. And there was an operational decision made because we had achieved probably in the close to 7 centimeters, but at the time we were staring down the possibility of another 22 coming. And with the staff and equipment that we had, we were worried about running out of actual hours. If we did get 21, we were, for the last 10 of those, we wouldn't have had the ability to put people on the road. And so the operational decision was made to wait for more snow, and that's what caused the frustration. At the same time, we'd communicated that it was a snow event, so the expectation is that in a snow event you're plowing. So we added a little miscommunication to that. So even our bylaw folks were thinking that we were in the midst of a snow event, when in fact an operational decision had been made to wait. So we debriefed over the situation. We spent a fair amount of time on it, and one of the considerations we did give was to, even if it wasn't a full change in service level, as this motion calls for, we contemplated whether there was a need to add some additional staff to head off that kind of circumstance again. And in the end, it really didn't make any sense without a more thorough review. That the thought was that, the likelihood of getting in the exact same situation again with 7 centimeters on the ground and 22 coming and trying to figure out the hours at the end of a week, we're willing to take the chance that we don't get the exact same scenario again, and if we do, we'd adjust a little differently. So it's not to put off the discussion about the service level, but just to say that if the same thing happened, I think we'd handle it a little differently. The concern is, just to jump a little bit ahead, is there's no, at 5 centimeter service level, if we get 6 centimeters, we're in great shape. We'll get out, we'll get all the plowing done, and everything will be fine. The real problem will emerge is if we get the first 5 when there's 21 coming. That's when we have to figure out how to deal with the hours that we need to maintain that service level throughout the snow event. And that's where risk gets. If we say we have a 5 centimeter standard, then we have to have in place the resources to make sure we can achieve a 5 centimeter standard. And so that's the part that needs a little more work.
Thank you, sir. So I think the sense is that it was more of an execution level than a service level problem. And with respect, I think, Councillor Tom, to the question of parking is, at this point, is not part of this. It might be part of the discussion. I would be very loath to jump into another parking discussion right now. That's staff does have direction to look at parking. So I think we have to stick to what we're talking about right here. I think, to Councillor Humphrey's point, it is an issue that we need to be aware of. And as staff are looking into this, that certainly would be one of the things that we would want them looking at. And we're going to go to Councillor Kim, and then I'm going to go back to Councillors Maracas and Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So from what I've heard then, we know that we've heard the usual amount of complaints, which, with the town our size, we're going to get a few of those. It seems, as Mr. Mayor put it, it seems like there's an execution issue. It's more than the guidelines or the service level issue. And based on what Mr. CAO just stated, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. CAO, is it possible then to keep the current guidelines and it's just a matter of executing better, or now that we've gone through this once? It would be a shame to, we had a lot of discussion on these new parameters and this trial period. And before we change the parameters and go back to a previous service level, I'd like to make sure that we're thorough. You just stated, Mr. CEO, that the issue lies in if we get the first 5 centimeters, 6 or 7, but the issue is what happens if there's another 20 centimeters coming. That would be an issue regardless of whether we return to 2013 or 15 or 2010 levels. Is that correct, Mr. CAO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. It would just be a case that we'd be, the tail end of the storm would be worse because we'd run out of hours with more snow on the ground. But the beginning of the snowstorm would be better because we'd be out deployed at a quicker rate.
Thank you. And just so that we didn't really discuss what the issues were because we all are assuming that we all know what the issues were. What exactly were the issues in December when we had those 6 or 7 centimeters and we ran out of time? Or was it just that other parts of the town were not properly plowed or plowed too early? What exactly was the issue that brought?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding of the issue was that there were plenty of areas where there were 7 centimeters of snow on the ground, and because we had made the decision to wait until the next day to plow, that basically that snow sat all day Saturday on the ground. It was picked up on, it was removed on Sunday, but the expectation had been set through the calling of a snow event that the plows would be out and that the roads would be good by, say, Saturday afternoon. And we weren't even trying to do that. At that point, we'd made an operational decision not to try and do that.
And lastly, just for clarification, what exactly were and are the 2013-14 levels that this motion is discussing?
To you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding is that that was a 5 centimeter. Once there was 5 centimeters on the ground, then the crews would deploy.
Sorry, forget it. Will that necessarily increase the hours? If should more snow falls, does that allow us to increase the man hours to clean up the rest of the falling snow?
So through you, Mr. Chair, that's why it's not even as simple as just setting a standard for 5 centimeters. 5 centimeters, as I said earlier, would mean that the crews are out sooner and they're doing a run at the 5 centimeter mark. The best thing in the world to try and plan around is, of course, weather. If it comes at 6 centimeter drops with a rest period in between, we'll be golden. We'll have a great service. We'll have 5 centimeters of snow will be gone. It's in those extended events where, number one, you run the risk of running out of hours. But if you want to mitigate that risk, then you have to have more of our hours available to you. So whether that's standby with a contractor or whether that's enhancing our own crews. But if you enhance your crews, get them all signed up, bring another 2 trucks in to have a faster response, and then it doesn't snow, there's only so much they can do in the winter. And so there's a waste there. So it's trying to find that sweet spot with something that's unpredictable as weather. So that's why if you want to consider a higher standard of service, we'd like to come back with a very thorough analysis of those options and where the risks are in terms of setting a 5 centimeter standard and then leaving yourself out there on a big snow event when you can no longer keep up. Or if you don't want to have any risk, what that would really cost to have the right manpower around to make sure that you could always deploy throughout a 24-hour storm. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the mayor's asked me to explain the hours limit. So, and I don't know the actual numbers here. Mr. Gallen will be able to help with that. But basically, our drivers are only allowed to log so many hours before we have to give them a mandatory rest period. There's also so many hours they're allowed to work in any given week. And so that's when we get into the hourly rates. In the let's call it the old days, 15 years ago, snowplow operators would operate for 20 hours and sleep for 4 and then get back on the road and go. And in today's standard, that's just not acceptable, and we'd be in big trouble with the Ministry of Labor and Ministry of Transportation if we tried to do that. So there are some limits to what you can do in snowstorm events. You can call it an emergency and you can get a little more leeway out of the regulation, but you still hit walls now much sooner than you used to back in the day. And so once those drivers reach those hours, we cannot let them drive.
So then the final question then would be, it seems like the service level is not the the minimum level in which we get out there for the first cleanup, it seems to be the man hours, then what can we do as council to get more manpower involved so that in the next 8 centimeters or 10 centimeters, we can get people back out there?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the 5 centimeter does affect it because that your crews are out earlier. So they are using up hours earlier in the storm if it's a 10 or 15 hour storm. So we'll take 15, I guess, as an example. That would be 2 passes at an 8 centimeter standard if everything was timed just perfectly, whereas at a 5 centimeter standard, that's 3 passes. So those same plows have to cover three times they have to do the entire route instead of 2 with this service standard. This is just a rough approximation. So the challenge is you either have to have more trucks and drivers so that you can get through a route quicker to get back in line to start, when it hits the next 5 again, or you have to have more hours so that you can just keep, when the guys run out of hours, you can just keep running the plows. You might still get behind if it comes down too fast. There might still very well be a situation where there's 7 or 8 centimeters because you haven't done your first run and another 7 accumulates behind where the first plow hit early. But that's just a balancing of how many hours you have sort of in the reserve to send plow drivers out and how many plows you have on the road.
If that's the case, it would seem to be apparent to me. I was all for bringing it back to previous levels, but if that's the explanation, it would seem that logical to keep the minimum height of the snow the same, and in order that we can save those man hours for the next 8 centimeters or the next 10 centimeters. So for those reasons, unless more information is brought forward in the next, in this discussion, I would not be for the current proposal then.
Councillor Maracas, Humphreys, Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to start off with one simple question. So tonight we're snowing. It's snowing. If we end up with 6 centimeters and that's it, and there's no other snow coming for another week, are we plowing?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll let Phil take that question because yeah, the answer is yes, but that would happen in the morning.
We would be plowing around 4 o'clock in the morning, between 4 and 6. We do have 2 crew members on tonight doing the primaries, and they'll be salting end to end. And then overnight in the midnight shift, there's 1 crew member keeping the primaries open, salting end to end. Then the crew leader will call in between 4 and 6 and call in the full crew, depending on what the weather is. So today we already called the snow event. So depending on what the number is, they'll make a determination and they'll either salt or plow. Yeah.
Then I guess it'd be the same question. So what's that minimum then? I mean, if our policy is set at 8, what is that minimum then? And how do the residents know when we're actually going to go out? And so that's a bit of a problem for me going forward. And that's why I'm saying our job is to set the policies. We need to set that standard, and that's what we need to do, right? So we can't just have residents guessing when we're going to go out. Are we going to go out at 5 centimeters? Are we going to go out at 6 centimeters? Are we going to wait till 8 centimeters? Is there going to be another snow event coming after that? And I get it. I hear the concerns about the costs and the budget implications. But realistically, when I brought this forward 1.5 years ago, there was another clause to this that asked that we review the service levels, look at cost implications, and develop a new service level moving forward. That never happened. So I got problems with that. Why don't we have the resources? We just finished the budget. I didn't hear anything in that budget that talked about our winter maintenance levels. That's a problem. If we're looking to provide the best service, if we need to add people, why weren't those provided to us in the budget saying, listen, if we need to up our winter maintenance service levels, we're going to need extra crew, we're going to need an extra plow. That was never provided to us at all in the budget. That wasn't even suggested. And so to me, I think there's a separation between what the residents need and what the organization wants. And so I think that's a big problem at the end of the day. you know, we talk about risk and there could be some risk and liabilities involved. To me, leaving the streets unplowed at certain levels is a risk. It puts our residents in danger. You know, so I'm all for dropping this back to the 5 centimeters. So I'll leave that part, but I would like to make an amendment and add a second clause to this that that we ask that the winter maintenance service levels be reviewed at the Finance Advisory Committee and options be made and put forward for next budget for us to look at delivering a better service when it comes to winter maintenance service levels.
Comments or questions on the amendment? Just on the amendment, please. Councillor Humphreys.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I don't mind adding that amendment. So here's what I'd like the Finance Committee to think of and staff. What happens when it's a really great winter like last year? There wasn't a drop. What happened to all that money? I don't think this is a budget issue at all. Sorry. We have very mild winters and there's nothing. What do we do with that money? We have one bad snowstorm and we can't handle it. This is not about finance. This is about delivering service our residents need. 5 centimeters, bad on me that I accepted that policy last term. And if I think if that's going to happen, you want to add that clause, no problem. I do not see this as a finance issue. That's it.
The speakers to the amendment, please. To the amendment? Oh, I'm sorry. Apologies. I wasn't sure if they were up there from before or not. I apologize. Is there a way to clear out the list and then come back to it?
Yeah, they're working on it.
They're working on it. Okay, Councillors Gartner, Thompson, Perry to the amendment.
Mr. Mayor, I don't want to speak to the amendment. I want to speak to the main motion.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. There is an opportunity for the Finance Advisory Committee to weigh in and provide a little bit of context. We are looking at the IES budget currently from a departmental review level, and so it would be reasonable for us at our next meeting in February to dive into it, and at least from a cost perspective, provide some feedback and some options for council. But I agree with Councillor Humphreys completely that really it's council's prerogative to determine what the policy should be and make those decisions. The FAC committee will simply provide some context and some answers to some of the questions I've heard around cost implications, whether it be increased service levels or staffing levels and so forth. But at the end of the day, it will be this council that decides what they want to do with that information. So, happy to tackle it at the next FAC meeting and provide a little bit of information for council to consider. But again, it'll come back for a decision on the policy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I get clarification about, there were two parts to the amendment. One is to send it back to the FAC. And what was the second part?
It's what's on the screen.
I don't have, thank you. I don't have any issue with bringing it back to the FAC. I think that makes sense. We've all sat around the table. Let's look at it. So I'm in favor of it. But again, I will vote against the first clause just because if there's no money in the budget to do it, and we don't know what the cost implications will be, I am all in favor of just reviewing it. If the FAC can come back to us quicker, let us know how we're reorganizing the budget for the department to move forward. I'm happy to look at it before next budget season. But ultimately, it's important that we make one decision with all the information in front of us before we just move forward because it sounds good. So if we're going to reallocate funds, let's find out where the funds are coming from before we move forward in that direction.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. Similar comments again. And I think that it's a good idea to take it to the Finance Advisory Committee, and I think it's a good idea to get a report, perhaps, with all of the kind of moving parts that the CAO was mentioning as some context for both the FAC and for council. So I'd be happy to support the amendment for this to come back to the Finance Advisory Committee to look at it from that angle. But similar to Councillor Peary, when it comes to the main motion, I'll be voting against simply reverting back tonight to the service levels of 2013-14. I'd be happy to look at a report and move forward once we get some more information wrapped around it at a future council meeting. So as far as the amendment goes, I'm happy to support it.
Favor? Opposed? That is carried. So then back to the main motion. We had, for the second time, I'm sorry? Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to continue. Councillor Perry mentions that he doesn't want to do something because it feels good, and slightly take offense to that, because I'm not doing this because it's a feel-good thing, and I'm doing this because I think it's the right thing to do. So I just wanted to point that out. I did a lot of research into this back when I brought it 1.5 years ago, and I thought it was the right thing back then. I still think it's the right thing to do. I just, I don't think that we're providing the best possible service when it comes to winter maintenance. And in my opinion, that's wrong. And when I look back at that 2014 report, I know I wasn't sitting at council at the time. But when I read that heading, the goal is to create the perception of an unchanged or increased service levels. The perception. So we're fooling everyone into that we're doing a good job or we're doing a better job. I just don't get it. Like, to me, and it's no offense to anyone that was sitting around the table at that time, that would have jumped out at me, and I would have been all over that. How can we be telling the residents that we're actually gonna lower your service level, and you're still gonna be paying the same amount of money? So, I just think that we need to do a better job. If it's because, when it comes to the budget, this stuff wasn't in, as I mentioned, I just don't understand how we've gone through 3 budgets now, and we haven't dealt with winter maintenance at all. And yet we've been asking, we want to provide that better service. So at the end of the day, I think we need to do a better job when it comes to winter maintenance service.
Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. And a couple of comments. My colleague is right. Perception should have been key. However, when we were explained about the new policy, there was also a change in support. Contractors do sidewalks, we do the roads, it's going to get done at the same time. It's going to all work out beautifully. It's going to work out even better. It's not really perception. We asked those questions, so I hear you. But my biggest concern is looking back at the policy again, and I felt myself in terms of trusting that it would work, was that the policy is compared to Ottawa. And Ottawa City is very different than our city. Sidewalks roll up at 6 o'clock in Ottawa. Try living there or working there like I did for a while. And it's quiet after 6. And they can do these things at primary roads and secondary roads. So we took a chance. It does not work. I am appalled every time we get a little bit of snow. It doesn't work. I know our staff works really hard to try to get the best done based on the policies we set out. So it's not staff that's getting, made a mistake. We did. So as councillors, if we don't feel that this is a problem, then fine. Vote, everything's fine. There is a huge problem. From 5 to 8 centimeters, those 3 centimeters are causing some sort of disconnect. We need to keep our streets safe and clean for our residents. I have got too many emails and calls about how unsafe it is. Secondary roads almost get forgotten. I don't even like that approach. It's unsafe to leave your driveway a day after a snowfall, a major snowfall. It's not right. Something's wrong. The whole approach is wrong. I don't know what can be done. I'm hoping some of the specialists and staff can take a peek and go back to, I'd like to go back to, somehow it worked before. It was still, it wasn't perfect, but it worked. I never heard things like risk or, afraid to get out of my driveway, or I don't know. I didn't hear that last term. I do hear it this term all the time. And one of the things the residents are happy to tell me is, I pay taxes for my roads, my garbage, and making sure that maintenance and the grass is cut around our parks. Why can't you just do that? Those are 3 things we have to do. If it's going to cost us more money to do it, then do it, because it's what the residents see. And for me, it's again, I'm not going to say it's a finances issue, because when it doesn't snow, we have a lot of money saved. And when it snows, we have to invest that money. And if it's a policy on labor hours, absolutely understand that. We have to have plan B, bring in the contractors to take over the plows, and then keep going until the roads are clean constantly. And you keep plowing and replowing and replowing. I think it's a matter of understanding what we have to do to fix it and just make it happen. And I really don't see this as a financial issue. You know, to say that is like, okay, well, next year when it doesn't snow, then what are we going to do with all that money? I'd like to know what we did with the money we didn't spend last year on not sending out plows. And I won't get started on how bad and poorly the sidewalks conditions are. I won't do that, because everybody knows how evidently awful it is. And all I could say to the residents is our contractor is obligated to fix and repair those lawns. And if they don't, let us know or let me know. And that's going to happen, because it's been disgusting. Sorry if I'm a little passionate, but that's all the hot water and heat we've been in since this happened. And I want to do better by the residents. So let's hope that this goes back to 5 centimeters and quality work done.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott, we have something that's called approximately a winter snow removal reserve. And when we don't use all the money budgeted for 1 year, it goes into the reserve. Am I correct on that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The winter reserve was collapsed into the general tax rate stabilization reserve a couple of years ago. Mr. Nadarozny and I have had discussions, and we spoke with Finance Advisory Committee, and we'll be developing a proposal in this regard, and perhaps reestablishing a winter control reserve in the coming months.
Yeah, I remember when those reserves were collapsed, and I wasn't happy about it at the time, and here's an example. Just a question, does anybody know how much we've saved since we've put this new policy into effect?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of any specific values. I'm not sure if Phil or Mr. Nadarozny have any figures available at the moment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So my understanding, in this is very rough and preliminary, I was just trying to get an order of magnitude when we had the discussion in December. But based on what it would cost basically to have proper staffing available for a 5 centimeter, it's in the neighborhood of $200,000 to $250,000 a year.
That kind of half doesn't answer the question, but thank you. So I just wanted to know, I mean, we did make this decision, I believe, for financial reasons. So perhaps at some time we could know what the actual result of that was.
Through Mr. Mayor, it would just be that factor by the number of years. My understanding was that it was a cost avoidance at the time, that in order to maintain, we couldn't maintain 5. We got to, with all these hours and restrictions and things, and I'm going by that in order to maintain the 5, we would have to put the extra people on. And at the time, the thought was that they could deliver a very similar service with an 8 centimeter standard, and then not have to spend that extra money. But again, this is a period that I wasn't here, and that's my understanding of at this stage. We'll certainly have to do some more detailed work on it.
Thank you. I didn't understand your answer. Thank you. Well, so it was cost avoidance. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson, Councillor Tom.
Thank you. I agree with the comments from the majority of members of council that, it is a problem. The work that's been done is not always satisfactory. We've all seen firsthand some of the work done on the sidewalks and on the roads, and it is a problem. What I'm not convinced of, whether it is a policy or an implementation, and talking with staff and others, there seems to be a bit of both. And so the question then becomes, is just reverting our policy from 7 to 5, does it fix all of the issues that we have? And I'm not sure that it does. Looking back to last term, and I don't have any facts, but I think we had issues last term as well, even with a 5 centimeter threshold. And so what caused those issues? So will this alone fix it? I'm not sure. And that's why I'd like us to dive into it, get some feedback from our CAO as well as staff, do some comparisons. So if we're going to fix it, maybe it's more than just changing the policy to 7 to 5. Maybe it's also increasing the budget, adding some more people. Let's get it right. I mean, if we learned anything from parking around town park is that, if you're going to make a fix, make sure you address it once and get it right the first time. And that's what I'd like to see us do here. And hopefully we can fix it for the remainder of this winter term. But I think there is a combination of factors. It's not just policy, it's implementation. But again, we may have had issues at 5 centimeters, and what were they? Can we not address them at the same time as we're doing this? And so I think that there is general agreement that there is an issue. It's just what's the best way to fix it going forward.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. I agree totally. I think we all would like to look at this, especially given that really unfortunate incident in December with respect to the real miscommunication and lack of execution on the town's behalf. Certainly, I think we were all at Christmas parties that night, and I think that was probably the only thing we heard from most of the people we were talking to, and certainly after that. So it's an important issue. I mean, everyone said it right. It's garbage, it's plows, it's the basic services that people want done. But I couldn't agree more with Councillor Thompson, and I think I've said it earlier, which is that we really just need to frame it and put the context around it. We can do it as soon as possible. Get all the information that we need to make a decision. Is this a staff discretion issue? Is it a purely policy-related issue? What are the cost implications? Because obviously we're going to have to increase the budget for this year. We don't even know what number that is at this moment in time. So it's hard to make a decision when you don't even know what it's going to cost. Let alone the other implications with respect to, what's it going to do to our staffing, et cetera. So I really think that we need to do something and dive into the issue. But as Councillor Thompson said, I think it's important that we first have all the information to do it right the first time and not cause another problem with trying to do it too quickly. So, because the other thing that hasn't been mentioned is, what are other municipalities doing around us? I mean, there's a lot of very similar towns very close to us. And, I know Bradford's service level, I could be corrected, but I believe their service level is 8 centimeters as well. So, but speaking with a gentleman who lives in Bradford, the perception there is that their streets are getting plowed much more adequately. So I think we need to look at this. We need to look at it quickly and make sure that we can, if we need to do something, we can do it for the remainder of this winter. But I think just firing from the hip and doing it without looking at some of the more wider implications and other matters is not something I'm supportive of. So certainly if we're going to move forward with a staff report, I'm all in favor. If we're just going to make a decision tonight as it stands before me, I will not be. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I listen into everyone's comments, which I agree, and I don't think anyone's wrong around the table. We all have valid reasons for the perspective that we have. And, I'm a little bit flabbergasted with the fact that we have a 150-year history and track record and documentation of 150 winters that we still haven't figured out what the best form of servicing people in the snow. And so maybe, just like the item that we discussed last week, we really need a critical look back, a critical review and report on all the issues that we faced in the last several years, because unless we're trying to reach the speed of light, which this isn't, there is an answer and a response to everything. We can't be saying, there's 16 inches of snow and we don't know how to deal with that. So, I'm happy with the status quo for now. We said this is going to be a trial run with the parameters that we've been given. We've identified that at least perhaps half of the issue is execution and just human, failure of human decision making perhaps. But I would like a report before the next budget that identifies all the things that could happen and have answers to them. And then we'll have at the budget, as Councillor Marcus said, we'll have all the the situations in front of us so that we can make a wise decision on how much resources to put forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make sure that we can split this. Perfect, thank you.
I was going to call them separately because I think people do wish to vote on them separately. I think paraphrasing what I heard is that it's along the lines of J.R. is human, but to really foul things up, you need a computer. If I was to put some words in Councillor Thompson's mouth, if we're already doing a bad job, doing it more frequently won't help. I think our staff have heard very loud and clearly that we expect better. And I know that those discussions have happened both with our staff and with the contractor. It has improved. I'll just finish by saying I actually have had some people who think we do a pretty good job of plowing. We can't lose sight of that. Yes, we have issues. We have areas that have not been well served, and we need to take care of that because that is our job. But at the same time, we also have had some areas that are fairly well served. So let's make sure we have that service for all of town. Final word to Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As many of us have said around the table, I think we're all in agreement, and I agree. Just reverting it back is not going to solve it. But I personally believe, and in my opinion, that it's a step that is needed. And like I said, that's my opinion. And I know that it's not shared right across the table, but I do agree that we do need to take a look at it moving forward, and I think there is going to be some financial implications to it moving forward, and to deliver a better job to the residents. But I'm hoping that when we do deal with this at the budget, as with many other things, that we look at it, we've heard many times that, let's not get into the weeds when we deal with these things. Let's look at it at a 30,000 foot level type of aspect. And if we're going to do that, I think that when you look at this specifically, we turn to staff and we say, you know what, this department, here's your budget, but we need to identify these are the residents' needs and these are the organization's wants. And we need to learn how to separate those and put an emphasis on the residents' needs, because those things need to be taken care of. And we need to make sure that they're delivered at the best possible way to the residents. Because at the end of the day, the most important part of this town are the people that live in it. And so, we have to provide the best possible service. And so when we look at it, that's what we need to do, is we need to separate the needs from the wants. And if we can do that, I think we'll be able to deliver the best possible service to the residents. So I'll be in favor of both clauses, and if I could have a recorded vote for that.
Do you want me to comment about that? We can't do number one.
No, we're not. Mr. Nader Rosny. Yeah, just Mr. Nader Rosny, just a comment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to raise the issue that, as worded, number one, we don't have the resources in place to go to a 5 centimeter standard if it snows tonight. So I don't know if there's a little flexibility on the wording or the timeline if number one is to be approved, but we just don't physically have the hours. We will run out of hours in any kind of event with a 5 centimeter standard. So I just want to make that clear.
No, just going to go back. I'll go quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe if we just change immediately, I'd be comfortable with changing immediately to as soon as possible, if that helps. And then that would be at the discretion of the CAO to come back with any type of budget implications, if it does pass.
We'll put that, Madam Clerk, we can just change. Friendly amendment. We'll just put that in. Okay, so that changes the wording. Rather than at the final sentence, or winter maintenance season immediately, winter maintenance season as soon as possible. Okay. Calling the vote, Madam Clerk.
On clause 1?
Just like, do you want to do mics or just, because that's going to be a challenge.
Yes.
Well, there's recorded vote.
Yeah.
So just if you want it on the audio, that's the question.
Okay.
Okay, so I gotta go, I'll do
You
this.
do the
okay?
audio?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Yes. Oh, yes.
No.
Yes. Pardon me? Yes. Thanks.
Yes.
No.
No.
Mayor Daw?
No.
Clause 1 is defeated. Clause 2, Councillor Marakis?
Just a second here.
Yes.
Councillor Gardner? Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Mayor Daw?
Yes.
Councillor Tom?
Yes.
Councillor Fury?
Yes.
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 And clause 2 is carried.
Thank you, Madam. We're getting very dexterous here on the buttons. Thank you. We did pass the items on consent, so before we move in, Mr. Elliott, hold on here.
I apologize, Mr. Mayor. I've just been informed that my father's been rushed to hospital, so I'm going to step out of the meeting. Mr. Nadarozny is going to cover for me. Thank you.
Council, as part of the consent agenda, consent items that we did pass was the item on the Governance Ad Hoc Review Committee. So I would just like to read out those who were appointed. There was 5 members: Mr. Steve Hinder, Mr. Bill Hogg, Mr. Terry Jones, Mrs. Anna Lozic Romeo. Did I get that correct? Yeah. Thank you. And Miss Anita Moore. And the first meeting is going to be held on February the 10th at 3 o'clock. That's the Governance Review Committee. Thank you. Now, Council, we do have some people in the audience for item C1 sub R5, which is a zoning application for Copper Valley Estates. Would someone please put that on the floor? Councillors Peary and Kim, speakers to that, please. Councillor Gardner, you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to say that I'm not pleased that council is going to approve a development that will encroach into a woodland area, that trees will be removed, especially as this is a nesting area. It's very hard for us as a council to see from this report where the borders of this woodland area and where the encroachment is taking place. So through you to Mr. Muno. Mr. Muno, is this something in the future that we could maybe have an aerial view of how the lay of the land looks, so that we might have a better idea of how large the area would be and what's going to be removed, boundaries, etc.?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, I can provide some additional photos moving forward, sort of ground level photos, and I do have some of those, albeit they weren't in the report, but we can do that moving forward.
Thank you, and I mean this will pass council tonight, so I'm really thinking for the future, because there are some areas that we can walk and there's some areas that we can't, and it's very. A councillor caught this last week about the nesting area, but if we had a diagram, perhaps we would have been able to and you could have explained it better to us at the time. I see from page 11 that any vegetation removal from the area will be compensated. So that will be according to our tree compensation plan, and through you, Mr. Mayor, that will go through staff, and staff will be involved in the placement of the trees and the species, etc.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. That's correct. We've included a standard condition of approval that will require tree compensation, replantation, and our Parks and Rec staff will be working with the developer to ensure that the appropriate number of trees are planted in the appropriate areas.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up, I mean, if we're taking away trees that are used for nesting, hopefully we'll be putting something in place that can compensate for that. I'm taking that as a yes. Mr. Romano, do you want to just say yes for the record?
Mayor, yes, that's correct.
Thank you. I just find that, well, I can only speak for myself. I'm not pleased when we allow a development to do something like this. I don't think it's right, and I will be voting against it.
Thank you, Councillor. Other speakers to the motion, please? In that case, I'll call the vote. All in favor of the motion on the floor, please. Yep.
Councillor Humphreys?
That's my job.
Sorry. Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
Yes.
And Mayor Dodd?
Yes. Yes.
Motion carries.
And then we'll move to item C1, sub 1, please. Someone put that on the floor. That is the JLC final facility status report. Someone put the, could we put that on the floor and then do an amendment, please? Thank you. Just to put it on the floor. Yep. Councillor Beery, thank you. Councillor Tom, second. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. You know, last week there was a number of comments made by councillors around the table, and I was chairing the meeting, so I couldn't necessarily add on to it. But, you know, I share their concerns with the information in the report, and I know that our CAO, Mr. Nadarosny, took copious notes about additional information that members of council are looking for. And so I just think, in my perspective, it's more appropriate to refer this report back to staff and ask that that information be done, rather than to receive for information a final report and then have a final report. So I'd like to change that recommendation, that it be referred back to staff.
Second by Councillor Marcus. Comments? We'll get this sorted. Any comments or questions on that? It's just to refer back to staff for a final report. In that case, all in favor, please. Contrary? I'm sorry? I'm sorry, Councillor Humphreys. This is...
Thank you. Thanks so much. That's okay. I'm trying to use. No, I appreciate this going back to staff, Councillor Thompson. It's really important. In fact, after thinking about it last week, what I'd like staff to do is almost like an audit of the whole event, sequence events, what happened, when it happened, the full story. You know, there may have been some additional information that maybe not be clear. We have to have it all on the table, understand almost like a storyline as to why things were done, what decisions were made, so we're all clear and understand what the case really is. So I appreciate you referring it back. Thanks.
Any other comments, please? All in favor, then refer back to staff. Contrary? That is carried. Thank you. If we could move to item C1, R3, which is Aurora's Multicultural Festival. Someone care to put that on the floor, please? Councillor Perry, thank you. Second. Councillor Thompson, thank you. I guess I'll go first. And I'll just wait till we get that up. Yeah, we need the Jeopardy theme song. I'll simply speak to the fact that there was originally 2 clauses. It's now a 3rd clause, which is to ask staff to come forward with a terms of reference. But and thinking on this last week, because I don't particularly support the idea of having another committee for this. We and I have spoken many times on our very efficient, effective, and just really good special event staff. I don't see any reason, quite frankly, to have a terms of reference come back as staff to do that when I don't really have the intention, quite frankly, of supporting a committee. So I don't think that was, as I thought of this over the week. So I will not be supporting the 3rd clause, and I'll be asking the clerk to split them out. I don't know if there's any other comments on this particular item. In that case, Madam Clerk, I'll ask you to separate. Perhaps you could call 1 and 2 at the same time, and another recorded vote, please, I guess, and then item 3. Councillor Humphries, do you wish to? Okay, I've got Councillor Gardner. I apologize, Councillor Gardner. And then Councillor.
I just did it very late. I'm not clear. You said that staff should do a terms of reference, or that we're not going to have a... John introduced that motion. Right. We're just going to delete that about a committee.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. I apologize if I wasn't clear. The original staff report was clauses 1 and 2. We added clause 3 last week at GC to develop a terms of reference, which would imply that we're going to have a committee. I don't support the concept of a committee. Why have staff go through all the work of a terms of reference? So I will not support the 3rd clause. Councillor Humphries?
But if we vote against, just to be clear, if we vote against this, we're not voting against a terms of reference coming back to council. We're talking about not having a committee. Yes. Thank you.
No, to be perfectly clear, I'm suggesting we don't need staff to develop a terms of reference. That is my position. I'm voting against clause 3. We're still going to go ahead with the public open houses and for staff to do the work that they were going to do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate your position, and I do think we have an amazing staff. Special events compared to none, they're just so incredible. But I do like the idea of having committee. I don't want to waste anyone's time in doing something like this. I just believe that it allows for an open communication vehicle for staff to consider different ideas through individuals who want to participate and volunteer that day. It's reminiscent of years ago. Maybe that's my problem. I used to be on the special events committee. I used to work with Shelley Ware. I used to work with Julie Gearing before her as a citizen, and it was just fun to be able to help put events together as a volunteer. So I don't see this as an obstruction of an amazing idea that staff will work with the open house information. I see this as just more individuals helping engage the community in other ways, and I don't see it as a hindrance at all. So for me, it's still a great idea just to support staff is how I see it. Thanks.
Councillor Perry, Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I see ourselves, we have, I think, sort of the dual role of both being the decision makers as well as the chamber of sober second thought. And although we did think that this made sense last week, once we look at the numbers in terms of the timing, having this committee in place to get this back to us, terms of reference back to us in February 2017, then to go out to go get committee members, we're losing all of that time for staff to be planning the event. If we want to talk about having, a separate events committee in the future, that's happy to have that discussion, but in terms of this event and having a committee set up for this event, I think we'd be doing a disservice to the community because we'd be missing out on the opportunity to go out and get all the work done without we'd be holding up the process. So I'm all in favor of moving forward with this event. I think the event was run extremely well last year. I think there was a fair representation from all cultures in Aurora last year. So I think on the whole, we need to move forward. I'm just not in favor of sending staff to come back for terms of reference so that we can vote on that at this point in time. So happy to see this go forward, happy to support the event, and just not in favor of Clause 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've had a lot of thought on that as well, and our staff did a terrific job of organizing and implementing, executing the festival last year. I have no doubt that they'll do an even more exemplary job given the one-year experience on their belt. As Councillor Perry mentioned, I mean, the one reason why I would be in favor of just maintaining the status quo and not having a committee, a public committee on this is just because of the timelines. I do wish this was brought forward in November so that the committee would have had more time to organize everything. But that said, we organized the first multicultural festival in one with one methodology, and now I'd like to see how it would work with just public participation. And we do have a dedicated group of residents here in Aurora who love to do these things, and I'd love to see new residents involved and put their name forward for the committee. And even though the schedule may be tight, I think half the battle has already been won in that staff has already indicated the date and the location, and that's a third of the battle, I think. And so I believe that timeline is still doable, and if just for no other reason than to see how this strategy would work in terms of the public being accountable and organizing such an event, and then the third year, then we can it'll guide our decision in with respect to how comparing the second year and the first year, and doing a critical review of the process, and third year may be different. But I'd like to know how it would work out if public had more of a role this year. Even with the 2 public open houses, it'd be nice to see the public take ownership and see what comes out of it.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. If I can ask a question of Lisa Worth, through you, Mr. Mayor Dahl, to the best of your knowledge, is there anything that precludes Shelley Ware or the special events team from utilizing volunteers to help put together this festival?
Thank you. Absolutely not. I mean, we're doing that on a regular informal basis right now for a lot of our existing events.
And so I think, I have some of the same logistical concerns as Councillor Perry in terms of not wanting to lose any time to put together the festivals. We've seen in the past some challenges of having compressed timelines, and so you certainly want to give staff ample time so that they can put together the best festival possible. And so, when Councillor Humphreys mentioned that in her prior experience, she was a volunteer at one time on committees, then maybe that's the hybrid option that allows staff to utilize some volunteers to help represent and expand the committee working on the festival, rather than utilizing the next couple months to put together a formal committee. And so, maybe that can be taken back to Shelley and the Parks Department to consider bringing on some volunteers to help put together the committee.
Thank you. I was going to vote against this. Excuse me. But something Councillor Kim said I think is important. This is a relatively new area of town, and if we can involve the residents, it would be great for them. I think it would be great for them. It would be great for us. It would make them feel part of the community. So I'm going to vote for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not really going to go too much into this. It's just something that Councillor Gardner just mentioned. And while I agree with her sentiments that, to bring in, new people, new residents from, and get them involved in things that we're doing, there's still a bit of a problem with that as far as, does that become part of the terms of reference? Is that, do we give preference to people that live in a certain part of town for this committee? What if everyone from the older part of the town are the only ones that put their names forward? So there's still a bit of those issues. So while I agree with you, I just don't see how it would be worked out and how it would come out in a way that you're describing it. So that's why I agree with everyone around the table, and I'll be voting against the creation of this committee.
Seeing no more speakers, Madam Clerk, if you could poll items 1 and 2 together and then 3 on a recorded vote.
Clause 1 and 2, Councillor Kim?
Yes.
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 Councillor Gardner? Yes. Mayor Daw?
Yes.
Clause 1 and 2 carries. Clause 3, Councillor Maracas?
That wasn't me. No.
Yes.
Councillor Tom?
No.
Mayor Daw?
No.
Councillor Gardner?
Yes.
Councillor Thompson?
No.
Councillor Perry?
Nope.
Yes.
Clause 3 is defeated.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That is the items for a separate discussion, Council. We'll move to R1, which is just the board memberships. If someone would put that on the floor, please. Councillor Perry, Councillor Tom, any comments or questions on that? All in favor? Oh, I apologize, Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. I'd just like to say it's been a pleasure of mine to serve on the Aurora Cultural Center board, and I wish the new board all the best in the future moving forward. It's a great board. There's a lot of great people in there, and I certainly give Councillor Gardner and Councillor Maracas my best wishes.
Thank you through Mr. Mayor. Same as Councillor Tom, it's been an honor to be on the board, and looking forward to, I know Councillor Gardner and Councillor Maracas will just love every minute of it. It's an incredible cultural center. It's very vibrant, and I think you'll have a wonderful time. And I'm sure that the great fresh ideas you'll bring forward will be very much appreciated for them as well. And I'm looking forward to joining the library board. So appreciate that. Thanks.
I'll call the vote. I'm sorry, Councillor Gardner. My apologies, and then Councillor Maracas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am not looking forward to leaving the library board, but I am leaving it in good hands, Councillor Humphrey's hands, and I believe she's been on that board before, and she knows how important it is. And I am looking forward to to being on the Aurora Cultural Center board and trying to contribute what I can to that board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to echo the sentiments. I just want to thank Councillor Humphreys and Councillor Tom for all the work that they've done on the Cultural Center board, and I'm sure that they will be missed. And just want to say that I am also looking forward to being part of that board and moving forward, and hopefully I can contribute in a very positive way.
All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And I want to thank all the councillors for the work they do outside of these hallowed halls. We have two motions that were on the docket here from Councillor Abel. Councillor Abel is, he's in the Caribbean, I think, someplace warm and sunny. So, I'm sorry? Yeah, so if I could have a deferral for 2 weeks, which would be to February the 14th. Valentine's Day, what a perfect way to spend Valentine's Day. Councillor Perry and Councillor Maracas. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Regional report. Any comments or questions on the regional report? Actually, if I could have someone move receipt, please. Thank you, Councillor Tom. Councillor Perry, any comments or questions on the regional report? All in favor then? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. New business. Councillor Maracas, may I start with you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we all know, the issue of the OMB reform is of great importance to the municipalities across the province. The province recognized the need for change and commenced a review of the OMB on September 2016. And throughout that review process, they heard from regional planners, developers, municipalities, AMO, and from individual residents. But it was Aurora that led the way in the drive for change with the Municipal Summit last May that saw over 100 municipalities come together to bring forward recommendations that would inform that review process. So now that the public consultations are over, and as Aurora has been at the forefront of this need for change, I believe residents and this council would like to know about the next steps. It would be great if our own MPP, Minister Chris Ballard, could share his thoughts on the OMB reform process and where we go from here. Now, I do understand and I appreciate the fact that his schedule is probably too tight to attend a council meeting. However, if Minister Ballard could provide our residents and council with a brief update in some form on the review, the draft bill, and what reforms are likely, I know our residents and this council would appreciate it very much. So, with saying that, I would like to put forward a motion that council send a letter to request that the Honourable Chris Ballard, MPP, Newmarket Aurora, Minister of Housing and Poverty Reduction Strategy, provide council an update on the OMB reform process, either in person or, if time does not permit, then in writing for a future meeting of council.
I don't think we do at this point, so we'll just move on.
New business.
Just calling the vote. All in favor? Contrary? That is carried. Thank you. Councillor Gartner, do you have anything? New business? Councillor Thompson? Councillor Humphreys? You're on. You should be. It's Doug. Oh, I'm sorry. Or Pat. Wrong, Councillor Humphreys.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today, the City of Toronto and the Mayor, John Tory, put forth a motion. It's really a united as an inclusive sanctuary city for Toronto, and I would just like our town to endorse it, support it. I think it's a wonderful reminder that we are an open-armed, welcoming country. Aurora is open arms to our many multicultural nationalities, and that we have compassion for our fellow differences. So it was just done, released a few hours ago, City of Toronto. I've sent a copy, or I think, thank you, Samantha, for providing a copy to everyone. I would also love for us to endorse and create our own motion from this as well. I just want to send a clear message to the federal government to continue our immigration laws and policies, and that we do not divide and mimic anything of our neighbors in terms of the actions recently displayed. So for me, this motion was really wonderfully received on a majority of everyone, and it was urgently provided today with no notice of motion for the City of Toronto. So take a moment to read it, and I would like us to endorse it, send a message clearly back to, if we can. Yes.
Council, this is, new business is and I let Councillor Maracas, pardon me, sir. I let Councillor Maracas put a motion on which it's not really the intent of new business. I certainly sense the urgency to this, given what happened the other night. So I will let that, but I want to remind councillors that new business is not the time for motions. So I think it would probably be appropriate if I could ask you to waive procedural bylaw. We'll bring, and if there's a second for that, we'll bring this forward now. And Councillor Thompson is doing that. All in favor of bringing this forward now? All in favor of waiving procedural bylaw to bring this forward? Contrary? That's carried. Councillor Humphreys, what would you like us to do? Just to endorse?
I'd like to endorse if it's... Yes, just to endorse Toronto's actions. Okay. That's all, really. Okay.
That's with respect to...
It's just to confirm.
Yeah. It's to confirm the sentiment of the town of the City of Toronto. It's essentially a sanctuary city, which doesn't really affect us, but it's to endorse the emotion, probably the feeling of Toronto. Well, I'll open it up for discussion. Councillor Beery, Councillor Tom. Oh, what happened?
I am fully in support of the City of Toronto being a sanctuary city. They have been for years. They had full background on knowing what it is and it entails. I'd be open to, I just don't know what endorsing their position means. I'm fully supportive of the sentiment, but what does it mean to support another city, to endorse another city, endorse a city doing this? It just, I just don't know what this achieves. That's my difficulty. So if Councillor Humphreys can help me understand what is achieved by us doing this, just provide me with a little bit of clarity.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It just, from my perspective, it just shows our support as a town that we believe in their sanctuary city and their commitment, and it's just reinstating that. That's all it's doing. To reject discrimination based on religion, ethnic, nation, origin affirms refugees are welcome in our communities. We did that ourselves here in York Region in welcoming Syrian to homes. For me, it's important. It's how I feel, and I'd like us to just support it. If you don't worry if you don't want to. It's okay. That's how I thought it was important enough after what happened in Quebec and what's happening in the world that we show our support. If you don't want to, it's okay. I want to say that.
Thank you. So just to remind everyone, as part of my role of FCM, I am on the FCM's resettlement committee for refugees. I fully support, open borders, bringing people who need to leave horrid, terrible situations to come to a safe place like Canada. I think it makes more sense for us to look at becoming a sanctuary town ourselves than just saying good on the City of Toronto and endorsing their actions, because to be honest, endorsing another community's actions is almost ultra vires in my view. It jumps outside of what our role is as a community to give another city a pat on the back without us ourselves adopting it. I don't see the point. So I'm all in favor of getting some more information so that we can move forward on this. I just don't know what endorsing their position means. I But for us, just to endorse what the City of Toronto is doing when we have no way of jumping in ourselves, I think we're missing an opportunity here. So I will be voting against just endorsing what they've done.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. My big issue here is that this gets dropped on my desk 30 seconds before we have to make a decision on voting on it. I mean, there's a reason why we have notices of motions and we do things the way we do. There's nothing time sensitive about this motion. So I think having a little bit of time to look into what the City of Toronto has done, maybe read through the motion once before sitting here would be nice. I just think it's courteous for members of council to have the time to look at these before we vote on it. Because I certainly have some questions just from reading it briefly for the minute and a half that I've had it in front of me. So, yeah, I mean, I appreciate that Councillor Humphreys wants to bring this forward. I think it's, of course, everyone abhors discrimination of any kind, and I think that we all should be working to make sure that we eliminate that kind of discrimination. But I really think that we should be given the courtesy to know what we're voting on before we vote on it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff with sanctuary cities that I don't know. I don't know what the context in the Canadian context, what it means. I know in some United States municipalities, sanctuary city means that they will not direct police officers to enforce federal immigration laws. But I don't know what City of Toronto passed. I don't know if that's their intent or not. If it's more symbolic, that's great. I just think I should be afforded the right to look and digest all the information before voting. So again, I know it's just an endorsement, but I would be happy to look at this and perhaps vote on it next time. If it's going to be on the table tonight, because I haven't looked at it fully, I will be voting against it.
Senator Thompson-Marakis.
I'm sorry, is there a motion on the floor to endorse this? I took a speed reading course about 100 years ago, but I have been able to quickly look at this, and to me what stands out is now's the moment for us to reaffirm the commitment to send a clear message that Toronto rejects all division, intolerance, and hate. I mean, I certainly can support what Toronto has done. And with respect to us doing something similar perhaps at another time, there is something in here we may want to think about whether it's appropriate. And we have a moral obligation to speak up when a government declares lawful refugees, visitors, and even its own permanent residents inadmissible and unwelcome. So we're actually making they're actually making an anti-Trump statement. Which may be appropriate for Toronto, but I'm not sure it's appropriate for our municipality, even though I think many of us would agree with it. But I would like to support this resolution. I think it's fantastic that Toronto has stepped up.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. For me, I like to keep it simple. By definition, to endorse something really is just to declare one's public approval or support of it. And we have supported many motions from other municipalities, from the FCM, AMO, and so forth. I look at it for myself. I read it. I understand the sentiment being put forward, and I don't have an issue, declaring my approval or support of what Toronto did. I think good for them. Now, if we want to take it to the next stage and do more and look at doing something that's Aurora-based, then so be it, but it's a place to start. And so, I appreciate Councillor Humphrey bringing it forward, and I think that I certainly will be in support of it to endorse it, and hopefully something more comes out of it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't waste any more time. I do have a procedural question. Should I ask that now, or should I wait till this is over? You mentioned that about motions under new business, and I'm looking through our procedural bylaw, and I'm just wondering if I could be directed to where under Section 37 new business, where it states that we can't put a motion, members of council are not allowed to put a motion forward, or is, like, 'cause to me, it's not part of our procedural bylaw discouraging us from putting motions forward.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you're correct, Councillor Marakis. It doesn't preclude a motion being put forward. There are some parameters and some suggestions around, and obviously I think the comments that were raised tonight regarding time to look at a motion and digest it, the best practice would be to put it forward through the notice of motion area of the agenda. However, if it's time sensitive, or again, you're correct, there is nothing that precludes council from doing that. So,
Councillor Humphries. Oh, sorry.
And thank you, and that's what I thought, and so I agree. If it's something more in depth, and it kind of goes to what Councillor Thompson was just mentioning, if this is just an endorsement, so I agree. I don't see it as something that we're looking at, like, going to go in depth and we're making a decision about what this town's going to do. We're just saying, you know what, good on Toronto, and so I have no issues in supporting it, and I don't see why it's a problem putting this forward under new business. So I'll support the endorsement. Well, yeah, but we're not, to me, we're not making any policy decisions on our end. So
we do that through the chair. Thank you very much. Councillor Humphries.
Thank you, Ms. Marion. Okay, apologize. You're right. I should have given it more time, and I guess following some of the major news this evening and reading it through, I did have that luxury of that. So apologies to peers, understanding, what's in the motion. And I just, what's in it, I felt from our perspective, absolutely not to, just to say, again, good on you, Toronto. Thank you for representing, for me, for Canadian morals and values. But if we want to do more from this, amazing. Councillor Pirie, absolutely agree with you. If there's ways we can understand what it means to get into an inclusive sanctuary town, and then if there's something we'd like to do that, from that perspective, perfect. But for now, it does mention what happened in Quebec the other evening, and for me, we did a moment of silence earlier tonight. It meant a lot to me, and for me, it just was timing was appropriate in terms of just saying thank you, Toronto. That's all. So apologies if I've offended anyone or made them feel under pressure to read a motion. It's just basically what it is for us to support or not. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand both sides of the discussion. I understand that Councillor Pirie and Councillor Tom are very detailed and like to cross the T's and the I's, and there's it's responsible of them to add that in. And at the same time, I do understand that it's important to, from an emotional and symbolic gesture, to show of support, just like we did with OMB and so many other things that others have supported us and we supported them, and vice versa. So may I put in a friendly amendment, and maybe perhaps we just put in the word symbolic, because I don't know what a sanctuary city is either, and I don't know what the responsibilities that would include, and so I'm wary of that. So perhaps maybe we can just go Toronto for All United as an inclusive sanctuary city be symbolically endorsed, and maybe that would maybe give us a default.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is not time sensitive. Let's just move it off and bring it back next week. If people feel that they need to investigate further, then let's do it. I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable with what they're endorsing, and it was meant to be a very unified decision this evening for us to do, not to make people concerned or wary of what they're approving. So please, let's move it off. If the person who seconded it doesn't mind, I'm sorry to cause the kerfuffle, and we'll go back next week and decide if we believe in it or not. Yep. I'm not going to make people feel uncomfortable with certain terms and words, and they need time, so I don't mind at all.
Thank you, Councillor. And And I'll just point out that the procedural bylaw speaks to substantive, and this was a fairly substantive thing. So I think that's what we're trying to do, is ensure that we are making informed. I've seen your passion before, Councillor Humphreys. There's nothing wrong with that. I just think that I think some of the passions that were expressed here were also, I want to make sure that I can make an informed decision. I think that's a fair thing to ask as well. Councillor Tom, do you have anything for us? New business, Councillor Kim? New business? Councillor Perry?
I received a phone call from a resident earlier today with regards to the subdivision on the northeast corner of Bloomington and Yonge. The resident was under the belief that there were some conditions in their plan of subdivision that were never followed through on. So I don't need anything right now, but maybe either a report back to council or just an email to council apprising us of the situation so that we can be aware of that, because I know that conversations were had with the IES department, the planning department, Parks and Recreation department. So just as an FYI to council, letting us know what's been going on around the conditions when the property was first approved to be developed. Apparently, from what I was told, there were some issues that were supposed to be addressed that were never addressed. So just some information relating to that, so that we can move forward in an informed manner.
Councillor Perry, is that the Allura subdivision? Okay. Mr. Ramuno, thank you. We'll move to, public service announcements. Councillor Perry, I'll start with you, if I may. None? Councillor Kim? PSA?
Yes, well, just, I'm sure everyone already knows, but just as a reminder that we have our hotel, and so great news there. And also Arctic Adventure. The first time that's happening this year would be the children's, like Chopped Aurora or something to that effect, some cooking competition for kids 8 to 13 years of age at the Armory. So please turn out for that.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. I'd just like to say thank you to both the Royal Canadian Legion and the White Heather Pipes and Drums. There was a fabulous Robbie Burns supper a couple of Saturdays ago, and it was quite Robbie Burns, and it was fabulous, as it is every year. And special shout out to Dave Veach for putting that on, and all the members, as I mentioned, of both the Legion and the White Heather Pipes and Drums, and looking forward to next year. Thank you.
PSA? Okay. I've got a couple. I've got a note here that the outdoor skating rinks are up and running, but I think that's really weather dependent. Lisa, right? On and off, on and off, on and off. Poor Parks guys must be going crazy. I'd like to recognize and congratulate Allie Dinsmore. Allie is with the Aurora Panthers rep Adam A. She was at the Leaf versus Calgary game, so I guess a couple of weeks ago on a Monday night. In the skills competition, and she won $800 for their team. So, great for Allie. Aurora artist Marilee Gibson is showcasing her abstract and whimsical watercolor artwork through the month of February in the Skylight Gallery just upstairs, and the profits from her exhibit, if you purchase any paintings, will be donated to the Butterfly Tree. And that's at Town Hall, which is open 8:30 to 4:30. It's hard to believe we're talking about summer camp early bird registration, because I believe there's still snow outside. But that is, registration is from February 27th to March the 10th. March break, of course, is March 13th to 17th, and there's lots to do, right, Lisa, at the town? So there's a lot of things to do, and you can check that aurora.ca and at aurora-ca/March break. Councillor Kim mentioned the Arctic Adventure, and along with that in the park is, of course, the Aurora Borealis, and the Arctic Adventure Day, February 21st, is the last day for the Aurora Borealis. We now have a door-to-door clutter collection. My wife has threatened to put me out on the stoop with that one. So But that's a great thing. You can put those textiles in a bag. For those of you who don't know what to do with old textiles but just don't want to throw them in the garbage, mark them with the T and they will be picked up. And the first collection is going to be Monday, March the 6th, so this coming Monday. The Aurora Winter Blues Festival kickoff is Saturday, February the 4th at 7 at the Highland Automotive Showroom. And then 2 weeks after that at SAC, so the Friday and the Saturday night. And then a little self-promotion here, last but not least, the annual Mayor's Luncheon is going to be Wednesday, February the 15th, and that's from the Chamber. So we have two other things that we have to do. One, in our bylaws, you'll see that Councilor Marcus?
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair. I do actually have one. I got thrown off because we're doing it at the end of the meeting, and I totally forgot. I just wanted to make mention that yesterday I had the opportunity and the pleasure to meet with our Ontario Attorney General, Yasser Naqvi. And we had a great discussion about OMB reform and steps moving forward. And it's exciting to think that the possibilities that we could be close to achieving authority when it comes to planning decisions right here at this table. So I'm looking forward to what the next steps are, and as we just finished putting forward that motion to have our MPP send us back on what those next steps will be. So just want to mention that. Thank you.
In our bylaws, and you'll see that we've changed our bylaws slightly. Our numbering sequence was getting out of order, so we're going to approve the bylaws under a letter, and then our legal department, our solicitor, will make sure that they're numbered appropriately, which is, I think, a good idea. But our last bylaw is to make Samantha Yu our clerk. So, deputy clerk, I'm sorry. It does say that. So congratulations, Samantha. And then we do have someone who's leaving us. We have our clerk. Yeah, I know. How'd that happen? Well, it was Lisa. Well, we told her either get the system running properly or you're gone. No, that's not true. We do appreciate apparently Newmarket lending us the clerk for a while. Lisa came to us from Newmarket, and she's got a great opportunity to go back to Newmarket. So we do congratulate you on your new position in Newmarket, and I can safely say that even though I was indeed right that one time, when you thought I was wrong, we have very much enjoyed working with you. So thank you so much for your efforts, and certainly the efforts you did around the new bylaw. That's the procedural bylaw. That's great, and the system we have here. A couple of growing pains, but I think it's going to be a great boost for us. So thank you very much, Lisa. A little round of applause for Lisa, please. You going to cry now? So, Council, if I could put the bylaws on the floor. Councilor Marcus, again?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to ask if we can actually call the last one, G, separately and have a recorded vote on that. Thank you.
Sure. So if I could have someone move and second A through F, please. Bylaws. Councillors Peary and Humphreys, all in favor of? Contrary? That is carried. Would someone care to move G separately? Councillor Marcus, you requested a recorded vote. Councillor Thompson, Madam Clerk.
Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Councillor Tom?
Yes.
Yes.
Councillor Gardner? Yes. Councillor Humphreys?
I didn't wait.
Yes.
Councillor Maracus?
Yes.
Councillor Kim? Yes. Councillor Peary?
Yes.
Congratulations, Samantha. And if I could have someone put the confirming bylaw on the floor, please. Councillor Kim, Councillor Humphreys, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Tom, Councillor Kim, all in favor? Contrary, that is confirmed. Thank you, staff. just